Hello and welcome to ChinnyVision. This time we're going down to Tandy to buy a computer. For viewers in the USA, Tandy was the UK name for Radio Shack. So just keep in mind, every time I say Tandy, I actually mean Radio Shack. Now, thanks to the kind people who support ChinnyVision on Patreon, I do have a few pounds every month that I can spend on things for the channel or save up for other things for the channel. And a few weeks ago, I saw this computer, a Tandy Colour 2, not getting much attention on eBay. And I picked it up for about £17. Not a computer I particularly had any interest in, but I thought, well, let's get it in and have a look at it and see what it does. It's got the Tandy name on there, and it's Colour Computer 2, and it looked very nice and in good condition, but it was marked as not untested, which is the eBay slang for I plugged it in and it didn't work. But yeah, so I got it here, plugged it in, and it did work. And it was also incredibly good condition. In fact, I'd say that somebody had bought this in 1983, used it for 6 months, and then probably bought a Spectrum and put this away and completely forgot about it. It's in that good condition. It's no marks. It's like new. No dust at all on it or anything like that. Obviously, we'll have a look on the inside and see if there's any telltale signs of it being used in there. But no, really good condition. So what is it? Well, it's basically a Tandy Colour 1 with more integrated circuits in there, and it's based on the TRS-80. And the TRS-80 started out as a joint venture between Motorola and Tandy, so over there in the USA, where these things were quite big noises, including the TRS-80 and the Tandy machines. In the UK, yeah, this is not that common. Despite the fact that this is based on a TRS-80, it's very different from the original machines, which were based on a Z80. This is based on a Motorola 6809E processor, which we'll hopefully find inside. Indeed, the only similarity between the name is the 80, which stood for TRS-80. In fact, they referred to this internally as the TRS-90. But again, this is the Tandy version, so it's just called the Colour Computer 2. It's very confusing. Basically, you can run Mark II TRS-80 software on this. Don't try and run Mark I TRS-80 software. And incidentally, of course, the Dragon was also based on the same design. So you can run some Dragon software, but not other pieces of software. The other thing is, these were manufactured, some of them in Korea. Original production was in the USA, but they moved production to Korea over its lifetime. So in terms of specs, we'll go a quick look at the specs. It's a Motorola 6809E processor running at 0.89 megahertz, or you can get up to 1.8 megahertz by fiddling around with the clock generator. It has 8K of ROM, 1632 or 64K of RAM. I think this one is 64K. And it has a 2-colour, a 4-colour, and 8-colour screen modes, and there's 9 colours in total, and a 1-channel sound chip. So let's have a look at the machine itself. And for TRS-80 fans who think I'm not going into enough detail about this machine, well, I'm trying to look at it from a UK perspective because these things are fairly rare, so it's almost a beginner's guide. So what you've got is a full travel keyboard there. It's very nice. I mean, this thing looks like the kind of industrial computer you saw in the mid-80s, perhaps in a travel agents or something like that. It's the original Mark I version, the Colour Computer 1, didn't have a proper keyboard on it. This has a proper full travel keyboard. It is incredibly substantial. That MSX Sony Hitbit I reviewed a couple of years ago had a nice keyboard. So does this. It's miles ahead of anything Sinclair, Commodore or Amstrad put out. Even the Acorn machines, this feels so nice. There's something going on there. There's no... I mean, I wonder if there's some kind of... It doesn't travel through to the case. You hit an Amstrad or something on the keys, the case shakes. This does not. There's a little bit of vibration there, but not much. It feels isolated. There's some nice stuff going on there. A really nice keyboard. We look around here. There's a cartridge slot, and that slot's in there. And again, it's so clean inside. Look at this machine. There's no dirt in there. I've wiped over the outsides. I've not wiped the insides. I just think this thing has not been used. Round the back, we've got a reset button. there, cassette port, serial port, right joystick, left joystick, and they're all on DIN connectors. Joy. Different size DIN connectors, but it makes it really difficult to pick out what connector you're supposed to be looking at. There's a TV out. It's UHF. That's blanked over there. It says channel selector, but it's blanked out. You can't take it out. And ow, that's metal. That hurt quite a bit. That's some kind of channel select thing, but it's obviously not meant to be removed. It's pre-programmed, and you've got a big old chunky power switch there. And you will note the power supply is built in. And get this, for 1983, molded on plug. Now, how many of you got your Amstrads or your Spectrums or your Commodore 64s on Christmas Day and you'd forgotten to buy a plug and you had to steal the plug off another appliance in the house until the shops were open again? This thing has, and this is what happens these days. All plugs come molded on. Back in 1983, all the way through the 80s, in fact, I think the Amiga was one of the first things I had with a plug that came on it, Amiga 1200. This, not just a plug pre-put on, it's molded on and wired in. There's no way you're getting that off, and that's a nice engineering thing. There was no obligation on them to do that. So this thing arrived, plugged into my TV, and I did get a picture from it, although it was pretty bad. I then plugged it into my capture equipment to see if I get a picture on that, because some of the equipment I send my stuff through has a very good tuner in it, very tweakable, and I've managed to get a better picture from it, although most people are not going to have that ability. It's got the Pioneer equipment I put old equipment like this through, has a very, very tweakable UHF receiver in it with all the tweaks and software you can make in there. And some people are going to find if you buy one of these, it's not going to work. You are just not going to get your TV to tune. And even with the equipment I have, it was difficult. You had to auto scan will not pick up on one of these machines. So you have to keep on aborting auto scan until you hit the right spot around channel 36 and then fine tune. Because if you just plug this into your TV and you hit auto scan, it's probably not going to find it. Similar problems with the Spectrums and Atari 7800s that I have on UHF. So keep that in mind that, again, there's no LED or anything on here, so you're not going to know if it's on until you've actually got a signal. So I've got one game cartridge here, Wildcatting. I do like these cartridges. They recess like the MSX cartridges there. So you've got a little thing there. Was trying to get hold of some games on eBay. I kept getting outbid, and that one was about £4. So I guess the collector who I was bidding against didn't want that particular game. We'll have a look at that in a bit. But they plug in to the side here. Like that. So you've got the slot there, and takes a shove, and in it goes, and out again that big door. And when you turn the going to say MSX, it's not an MSX, it's a Tandy. When you turn the Tandy on, it will then boot into the game like any cartridge system you'd want. So yeah, and that's got the Radio Shack and the catalogue number, the old Tandy catalogue. Remember that? They used to send through to you in the post. So I guess the thing we're going to do with this is have a look at some of the software, but also let's have a look at what's inside, because I'm going to be really fascinated to see what a American computer, because this is an American computer, has inside it compared to the ones in the UK that we're all familiar with. Important to say, from the UK perspective, this machine was a flop. They're not common. They're very common in America, lots of them online, proper TRSs and the Tandys. If the variant you will have seen in the UK is the Dragon, which sold a few units, fairly popular in 1983, but Dragon, of course, went bust, and that was the end of that. Not all Dragon software is compatible, though. Some games will run, some won't. You won't know what's going to work. And one thing I mentioned as well, tape leads. If you want a tape lead, it is compatible with a Dragon lead. This is a Dragon lead. I would have usually bought it from Retro Computer Shack, who makes much nicer leads than this one. But as we know, he's been ill and has only just come back online. So if you are looking to buy leads for any of your micros, do get them from Retro Computer Shack, because Ian there deserves our support. Top guy, and certainly makes cables better than this, which I just bought from some random seller on eBay. And yeah, I mean, it works, but it's nasty, cheap stuff. I believe it was more expensive than Ian's cables as well. So yeah, do go to Retro Computer Shack. He's not a sponsor. He doesn't. We don't have sponsors anyway. But I think someone who does such a terrific job for the retro gaming community, and who's been so terribly ill over the past 6, 7, 8 months, something like that, deserves our support. So go and find his shop on eBay and do buy cables from him rather than this old rubbish. Right, so let's open her up and have a look at what surprises, and let's see how clean this thing is, because it's got vents on the top. So if this thing has been out and used, the insides are going to be filthy, I would have thought. And perhaps, you know, it may have been the case that the seller cleaned this up and then it's filthy on the inside. But I think, I just got a hunch, this thing was bought and then the people who owned it realised there was no software and they're probably better off with the Spectrum. They put this in the cupboard after 6 months and went and bought something more interesting, so which you could actually get software for. So yeah, let's have a look inside and see what's going on. So we go over to the underside there, and we can see the voltage is 220 to 240 volts and 50 hertz, uses 22VA. And so we are model 2631334B, so that's perhaps a Vision 4B, I don't know. And look at this serial number, 2000822. That's a lot of zeros in the serial number. Is this a low down machine in the production run? I don't know. I don't usually see a lot of zeros in a serial number. It usually indicates it is fairly low down. Yeah, that's very interesting. Custom manufactured in Korea, so it is made in Korea for Tandy Corporation. Refer to the user manual for warranties and limited Tandy Corporation liabilities. Nice rubber feet on the bottom. You don't always get rubber feet on 1980s micros. Usually just moulded into the case, which means when you touch the keyboard, everything gets transmitted through to the table you're typing on, which was usually not a proper computer desk, but your dining room table or something. There's another screw. Is it a different size? Is that quite released? It has released now. Right. So we've got different colour screws there, so we keep those separate from the others. Are they all the same? No, they're all the same length. They just look, the way the light catches them, they're all the same length. Right. Here goes nothing. Oh, the top comes... Oh, look at that. The top comes completely off. There ain't much dirt in there. There is not much dirt in there. This thing has not been... This thing hasn't been used, has it? Look at in here. Right, look at this. No, it's just... It's clean. It's a little bit of dust in there. A little bit of dust on the cartridge connector. And so I'm turning my head away from the microphone so if you can't hear me. I'm just astonished. I'm just astonished at the condition of the inside of this computer. Little bit of rust or something on there. Look at that. It's clean. Absolutely clean. Wonderful. I think I've already answered why this keyboard doesn't transmit through the case. There's rubber grommets on the case there and a bit of foam for the keyboard to rest on. Let's just lift that out very carefully. You don't want to be unplugging 1980s ribbon cables, because if that breaks, that keyboard's gone. Look, we've got rubber grommets there on there. That probably deteriorated slightly, but not much. And look, it's simple engineering, very cheap to do, but they've put rubber on there, a rubber pad on that pillar there, and a bit of foam. And that's solid rubber there. That is solid rubber. So we've got some chips down here as well. So while this keyboard's up, let's have a look at these chips in here, because I don't want to unplug a keyboard, because ribbon connectors are a world of hurt on old computers. You don't want to unplug them unless you're seriously doing big work on this thing that's essential. This is not essential. This is looking around inside the machine. So we'll zoom in, have a look at this board. And just looking at these chips on here, that appears to be some kind of address multiplexer chip there. That chip there is for handling the peripherals, and there should be 2 of those in here apparently, according to what I've read. And we've got 2 smaller chips here that look to me, for all the world, like RAM. And the codes appear to indicate they are, but I can't find out the capacities of them. We've got these connectors up here as well. And again, I don't know why would you have these headers here for, I don't really know why you'd have that. Not too much of particular interest on the bottom half of the board here. That appears to be some kind of timing crystal there. So I can do the video circuits along here, possibly. Got a capacitor there, electrolytic capacitor, and you've got up there, move the camera across, a big heatsink there. Get you focused on that. Just there. Big heatsink, and that's going to be a voltage converter there to drop it down to 5 volts, whatever the RAM and things need. But there's a big gap over there and plenty of circulation for the hot or heat from that heatsink to dissipate. It's a nice chunky heatsink there. So up the top here, and you've got your power supply there, protected by a bit of cardboard from the case. Probably couldn't do that these days. Probably need something a bit more substantial, a bit of plastic or something. But this was 1984-5. So that is cable tied on. And epoxy, you've got a big capacitor there. There's a few capacitors around here that could be issues worth looking up for leakage around them. Not much scope because this hasn't been on to leak. But that big one there is not as big as the one inside the MSX machines or my hip bits, but worth keeping an eye on. You've got a UHF modulator there, which is your only video out, and there appears to be some kind of adjustments possibly there and there that you can make. I'd probably take the top off before that. That's probably just to tweak the UHF channel slightly. That channel 36 blanking port we saw at the top, indeed there's nothing behind it. There perhaps in America was a adjustment pot there, but yeah, nothing on the UK version here at all. I want to find CPU, and is that it there? I've got to look up underneath. 609, there we go. There's the CPU. That's the Motorola CPU, 0.89 megahertz, or you can overclock that by turning off some of the timing registers, I think. Got a socket here that's bigger than the chip. Yes, that's marked Tandy 1984 Vision 1.3. That's the ROM. Presumably at one stage they've changed the ROM chips and gone down to a smaller socket, or perhaps that's the only sockets they had. Don't know. And that's another close-up, and look how clean this is. It's just, there's a few bits of dirt on there, or dust rather, but not much. There's a relay, again, if I can get you up there. And just get you focused in on that. I'm sorry, this is manual focus on this camera, so I've got to adjust it slightly. Hopefully you're in there. Relay there that you can hear clicking when you reset the machine, and it's next to the tape interface. So that's what controls the remote socket on the tape interface. Lovely little thing. You can see through the lid there. Lovely. Got something really interesting there. We've got links for 128K or 64K. So ignore anything I've said about memory and what I've managed to pick up online. Perhaps that was the American models. This revision of the Tandy Colour 2 is either 128K or 64K. And we've got links there, and we are linked across to 64K. And I've just noticed on the ROM up there, on the side there, 64K, we've got a 64K ROM. So it's not just a question of altering this and changing it around. You need to have a 128K ROM. And again, if I go up there, and I just release my camera so you can see that. I'm going to try and go in as far as I can. Sorry if that's slightly out of focus. I'm going as far as I can there. But look at this. Look at this. We have got the 64K ROM goes up to there. And if you've got the 128K ROM, it's a bit bigger and it goes up to the end. So it is the case that they have the right, it detects what kind of ROM it's got, and you've got the smaller ROM for 64K and the larger ROM for 128K. And there you've got your cartridge connector. It's quite small actually, considering the size of the cartridge, which goes, that's how the flap thing works there. And if I get my cartridge from over here, you can actually see it go inside. Hopefully it won't cause any problems by doing it this way. There you go. That's how that goes in. It's quite sturdily connected to the board there. And out it comes again. So yeah, there's not too much inside these because of the way Tandy made this and Motorola, because it was a cost-down version of the Tandy Colour 1. So they've integrated everything down into these chips and just reduced the component count in order to get the price down. And while we're in here, I just want to talk about the plastics on this machine, the quality of them. So we'll just move that machine back a second to have a look at the top of the case and have a look at just how thick and chunky and sturdy this case is. This is not an Amstrad, this is not an Atari, this is not a Commodore, it's not a Sinclair, where they've all got very thin cases. Not even BBC Micros that have pretty nice cases, or the Electrons. This is really nice, and it's thick, and it hasn't discoloured because it's obviously not been used. Any colouring you see there's just my video lights, just kind of putting, I've got a little bit of a orange light coming across there just to add a bit of visual interest to what we're doing here. But this is so thick and so sturdy, and you look inside and this is the kind of thing that the Future Was 8-Bit talks about when he's talking about cases. There's a few little marks in there on the moulding and things, but no bodges or anything you can see on these plastics. They've pretty much got it nailed. As I say, there's a few little marks in the moulding, but not major stuff. No bits of putty put in there. And it's so sturdy. And, you do this to an Atari, that snapped. That would have snapped by now. Kind of force I'm putting on that. I've got Ataris that have been posted to me that have been really well wrapped up, sent through the post, and arrived smashed up. One of my STs is like that. Just bits had fallen off, including inside. It hadn't been banged around. It was really well packaged. These cases are really nice, and you've got the different textures on here as well, if you can see. You've got a different texture there, smooth bit there, a texture there. It's all exudes quality way in excess of any other computer that I can think of from this era. Whoever was in charge of this, they didn't skimp on the plastic casing. It's really well done. There's no discoloration. The inside is exactly the same colour as the outside. It's absolutely unbelievable. This machine is, for all intents and purposes, mint. So we need to talk about software on the Tandy Colour 2, and we'll talk about it from a UK perspective. It wasn't one of the most common computers in the UK. I don't remember ever seeing software for it on sale. If you're in the USA, it's completely different, so ignore what I'm saying because you've got plenty of software available. USA, eBay is heaving with software for the Colour 2 or the Coco, and I haven't mentioned that name so far. It's sometimes known as the Coco Colour Computer. In the UK, your best bet are perhaps cartridges on eBay, which are cheap but not commonplace. I managed to pick up one. This was £4.50 for a game called Wildcatting. Tape software, yeah, some available. Again, not a huge amount. The thing you'll probably end up doing is downloading software from online and playing that as WAV files, which is easy enough. There's a repository online that you can use. The problem is finding software that's compatible with the Colour 2, because some of the software will be Dragon software. Also, you've got to know all the commands for Tandy Basic to load machine code programs, and I think it's C-load and M-load off the top of my memory, but I'm not sure. And then you've got to type in run sometimes when you load it in. So you've got to know what you're doing with these things. And again, I was playing a lot of software, and a lot of software didn't work. Some of it did, some of it didn't. Some of the images were bad, the tape images. It was a bit of a nightmare. These are some of the games I did get running. I got Wildcatting running, this cartridge here, which is a game about digging for oil. You have a map and you can play with multiple players if you want to. You pick a spot on the map and then you pay money to buy that spot on the map, and you drill for oil and you keep on drilling until you find it. And the idea is to make the most money. You have a nice little animation when you've got your oil rig and it's digging for oil. Different parts of the map have different quantities of oil. You get closer to hot spots or where there's lots of oil, or other parts of the map where there's no oil. Could be fun if you've got lots of players, although it does get tedious with the animation. The other game I looked at was a game called Cuthbert in Space. Cuthbert was a big noise on the TRS-80 machines and the Dragon, and it's a jetpack clone. It's black and white, perhaps it might have been for the Colour Computer 1 with less specs, or just might be the colour modes, I don't know. It was fairly fun. It was a jetpack style game. One of the other games I looked at was a port of 3D Death Chase from the Spectrum to the TRS-80 and was superb. It looked brilliant. It played brilliantly. It was so much fun. Death Chase is a brilliant game anyway, and it was nice to see such a good game on this machine. It looked absolutely, it loaded first time. It was no problem at all. It was great fun. I highly recommend the game for the Tandy Colour 2. This machine is UHF only. There is no composite. It's not a trivial mod to do. There's no RGB, so you haven't got the nice pin-sharp pictures you get from my Amstrad Capture, which is RGB, or my Sinclair Spectrum, which is also RGB, or my Commodore 64, which is S-Video. No, this is grotty old UHF, as you used to tune in your TV in the 80s, and therefore I'm afraid the quality is pretty low. But you can see some of the games that are available that I managed to get running. Nothing really jumped out at me as this must be a reason you should own this system, like, say, Ball Blazer on the Atari 8-bits, and other machines, or having Gradius, Net/Nemesis on the MSX, which are really must-own games for those systems. This is a machine that really was a niche even back in the day. It sold only through Tandy stores for a relatively brief amount of time, and very quickly there would have been Spectrums and Commodore 64s on the shelf in Tandy alongside it. And the problem was, in the UK, there wasn't much software available. Therefore, there's not a huge user base of machines. It came out in that era where everybody in the UK was launching computers every 5 minutes. The Electron, all those other machines that came out in '83 you can think of. And this was just another machine. The Dragon, you probably would have bought a Dragon than one of these if you wanted a TRS-80 clone in the UK. They certainly sold better. And if you look at the amount of machines on eBay, there's many, many more Dragons available. That said, as a piece of hardware, I mean, look at it. Look at it. It's gorgeous. Isn't this something you'd want to have on your shelf? It just exudes quality. It's so well built. You'd think those grills up there would flex. They don't. The keyboard is absolutely gorgeous. Everything about the build quality is a whole level above anything you saw in the UK, apart from perhaps the BBC machines. But it looks like computers were supposed to look when you saw business machines. No sharp edges. It's all curved. It doesn't look like it's an inflated bread bin like the C64s of the time. It's all straight lines and then curves. And it's just, as I say, so well built. As a device to put on a shelf and perhaps play around a little bit with, it's a gorgeous thing to own. As a gaming machine, as something you're going to use a lot, I'm afraid, certainly in the UK, no. Perhaps if you're in the country like the USA, where there's much more nostalgia and much more availability of software, you're going to have much different feelings to how we have in the UK. But for my money, you're going to be picking up for things like the VIC-20 and Electron and other stuff before you start looking at this as one of the machines of 1983 to own. But as I say, if you live in the USA or other countries that aren't the UK, your mileage may vary.